It's a little early, Iris. I told them we threw your timing off because there's no school, so we didn't have to pledge.
I know, I thought I had a few extra minutes there, Ricky.
I know, so anytime there's no school, it throws our timing off over
I
here.
know. It did. Threw me off this morning, Rick, but I'm here.
That's all right.
We're the right way girls.
We are the right way, girls.
I love your green. Everybody's got
you know what,
You're
Iris?
sort of missing. You're sort of missing.
I promise I have some.
You have some, but you don't have it on. You may get pinched today. So good to be with you.
You know what?
That might be dangerous.
Oh, we're not going to ask that question.
This is going to be a very good show this morning
Okay, Joe.
because some got the memo about green, some didn't. But anyway, we're going to go into that later
got the
because
memo.
I don't
Green
want
is
to
good.
spill the beans on who our guest is yet. But Iris, welcome home. You know, Iris has gone all week, and she said, Joanne, you hold the fort down in Franklin County, and I'll hold the fort down in Nashville. And I say, okay, sister, that's the way it'll be. Now, we are the Right Way girls, Iris Rutter and Joanne Davis, and we have a wonderful program planned for you today. But first, Iris, let's thank our sponsors. Do you want to go first?
Certainly. The first sponsor we're going to talk about today is Inside Storage, located at 1009 South College Street here in Winchester, Tennessee, for all your climate-controlled storage needs. The number to reach Inside Storage is 931-308-6622.
Wonderful, Iris. Now, I have two sponsors to talk about. One is Money Down Motors.
Look at you getting it right.
And you know what I did?
Hey,
And look at my car out there. That came from Money Down Motors. My new car, I'm so excited. I can get in it.
New, and she couldn't get in the other one that he had.
I know.
Other new
I don't
one.
know why you let Flossie choose things like that.
Well, you know, I told him what I wanted, and he got me what I wanted, but I didn't know they'd changed the model. Because the last one I had was 1998, and since 1998 to 2023, they changed the model.
She looked like a little ant sitting up in that thing.
I know, and I couldn't get in it.
I
I
couldn't
could
even
not
get in.
get in it. It was a Toyota 4Runner, that's what I wanted.
I remember I liked it.
I know, but now I have a Toyota Highlander that's closer to the ground. So Money Down Motors will find that car you need, and you say, I wanted a low stepper like Joanne, or a high stepper like maybe our new director of education, because he's a tall guy, I've heard. So anyway, that's the deal there. Money Down Motors next to Good Shepherd Church. Our next sponsor that I'm going to talk about is Complete Express Care for your urgent needs, but maybe not your life-threatening needs. You need to stop at Complete Express Care and let them diagnose your problem, take care of it there, or send you on. Complete Express Care, open 7 days a week, located by Bennett's Pharmacy. And they take veterans benefits, as Ricky has always told you. Now, radio audience, you know the Well Calling Show, 967-2201, but I am going to ask you not to call in until we have completed the question and answer part of our show, because then if there's anything we say on the show that you want to further expand upon or ask a question, call in. But some of your questions that you have as you listen may be taken care of with us. Okay, Iris, two big things happened this week before we get into our show.
Okay.
One is congratulations to Tracy Hayworth. He is our new football coach at Franklin County High School. And Tracy grew up here. We all know him. He has a smile that will looks like a mile, doesn't it?
But his head's so big.
Yes, and he's very he's just a nice guy. And Ricky knows his football skills. I don't know his football skills as much as I know him to just be a very nice guy.
It's a great hire. He's been doing an excellent job as assistant head coach for the last 2 years at Franklin County. I think it was a smart move just to step him up into that position once the opening came available last week.
Okay, the next person I'm going to congratulate is Scotland Stewart.
Yes.
Do you know who he is?
I'm sure I'm about to.
He just won $35,000
Yes.
from the Veterans of Foreign War. He won the top prize out of, listen to this, out of 23 3,000 applicants. He won at Franklin County High School student. I was reading about our guest, and I saw this. I said, oh my gosh, I haven't heard about this. So anyway, well, hats off to this kid. Oh my gosh. He won, and he went to Washington, D.C. to receive the $35,000 prize, first prize, and he gave his speech. You know what? They talk about the country and the rednecks in our schools, and here we have a child, a sophomore. But anyway, and Iris, I've already invited him to come to our show next time we meet, and I want him to read his essay, number one in the nation. $35,000 scholarship. Isn't that wonderful?
It is
Awesome.
I know, and I've invited the principal at the high school, Dr. Alsip, to bring him, and I just think that's wonderful. So anyway, I did want to congratulate those two before we get started. Ricky, if you want to see that, so you can put it on your news.
I think we've actually had that already, the story already, but I forgot the kid's name. When I saw the picture, I knew you were talking about.
Scotland Stewart, and what an interesting name. But anyway, congratulations to Tracy Hayworth and Scotland Stewart. Okay, now we have a very special guest, Iris, today. We have, first of all, Cleo Walker, and she's a very important person. She is the head person, the chairman of our Franklin County Board of Education. And they just made a very important decision this week. And I'm going to ask Cleo what that decision was, how she decided that this was her guy. Because Cleo, I know it was a hard decision. And you go through resumes, you go through letters, you go through calls from the public, and all of it, and then there's public pressure to all of it, and you have to say, who is this person I want to pick? And you know why I'm asking you this? I'm in politics. Did you know that?
No, I would have never known that.
After election, I always say, what was it that people voted for this person for? What was it, Cleo, that really said this is our guy?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. I really appreciate this opportunity. It wasn't just me. There's 8 members of the school board, as everybody's probably well aware of, and the process was an arduous task. We started back in November, hired TSBA to do a national search for us. They came up with 18 people that applied for the job. They had a committee that went through and vetted all the resumes. They brought us what they thought were the 3 best candidates to fit into our community and to work with our school system. So with that being said, all 3 of the candidates, I think, were very worthy, and it was very tough to pick one. We went through a process of interviews. As you know, we had a public interview out at North Middle School. We had audience there in the auditorium for that. It was also live streamed. People could give feedback on a Google Doc if they watched the live stream, or if they were there in the auditorium, they could fill out a paper to send back to us. After that process, we then had the 3 down, and they met individually with each board member. They met with the supervisors. Then they came back down another day each and toured the entire county, went into every school, met all the administrators, talked with them, so that the administrators got a feel for what they thought might be the best fit for our county. And then we got feedback from the administrators. So having said that, I don't really know of anything else that we could have done to get any more information about them to make our decision. When it came right down to it, each board member was asked to pick their top 2 in no order. And from that vote, we we had one of the three that only got 3 votes, and that was Dr. Treadway. So at that point, we had Dr. Alsop and we had Dr. Holman still to vote for. And each board member was asked then to pick their one person that they thought was the best fit for us. And Dr. Holman was that person.
Okay, but I want to know, what was it, Clejo, that kind of tipped the scale for you to vote for Dr. Holman?
For me,
Yes.
if you know him, and you will get to know him, I'm sure, he likes to talk as well. He's charismatic. He really is. We took him into the schools. One school I took him to, it was like before I could even get the principal out there, he already had 3 or 4 teachers out in the hall, and they were all chattering and talking and just connecting, basically. So that, to me, is very important. Plus, he's got a great background. He has spoken at lots of conferences. I think he can actually get Franklin County Schools out there and let people know who we are and some of the good things that we're doing. And I think he's going to be very instrumental in us doing more good things.
Okay, Iris, do you have anything to ask Clejo?
No, I don't. The last time we did this search, I think, before Stanley was your superintendent, I was a county commissioner, and you did it a little differently then. You had 3, I think, in-person interviews with the public involved.
We started out with, that time, about 7, if you remember.
A lot more.
Then we got it cut down to the 3.
Yes,
you're right.
And so I was able to attend those and enjoy that process. But of course, now I was in Nashville. I did see that it was live streamed, but I didn't have time to every minute I had. I needed to be doing something else, so I didn't get involved in the interview process. So no questions from me.
All righty.
Okay, so you would think that, from what I'm hearing from you, Clejo, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that it was the way he connected with people that was what kept you,
All things being equal, yes.
Okay, so everything being equal in your mind, it was that's what tipped, because those, in my mind, that's what I like to hear when I work with candidates. What is the most important thing that tips the scales for people? And it's likability, would you say that? Or personality is what tipped the scale for you?
That, yes. But he has a lot
I
of
know,
attributes.
I'm not, because you had resumes that you read,
Yes, ma'am.
you had letters
Yes,
from all over,
yes.
background letters, you had calls, and you had the meetings, and you had, I know you had to take all that, but I'm looking for that. What was it that tipped the scale for Clejo Walker? Okay, now, the person that you picked is here with us.
He is.
Now, he's already made one little mistake.
I know.
Okay,
I should have taken him by Walmart.
introduce our new director of schools, and then Clejo can tell you the little mistake that he made. The first thing Joanne Davis said when she met him.
Well, our new director, and by the way, he will start with us on July 1. Hopefully he will be down here a little bit the latter part of June to get acquainted and to meet with our current director and supervisors again. It's Dr. Kerry Holman. He's currently at Laverne Middle School in Laverne, Tennessee. Actually, he's a hometown guy. He was raised here, worked here in the system. I had the pleasure of working with him for a while out at North Middle School, and I hate to tell this, but he actually was my student out at North when he came through out there. So he's not new to the area. So, Kerry?
Thank you all so much. I'm truly excited to be here in WCDT and with you all. I'm looking forward to learning more. And so when I can start, I can talk a whole lot. So I'm going to yield myself to be respectful to everyone's mic. But yes, they're getting me this morning on this whole notion of green. And you know what I thought?
What'd you think?
I thought that if I would come in, and once I saw you all, and I saw all the green, I said, someone is going to just embrace that necklace and give it to me and just let me sport it all day long.
You know what I... Okay.
See,
connections.
And that's how we start with connections. So I have a connection, and you all, those of you, if you could be here in the studio, you would see that I am about to put on a green necklace, and when I tell you I'm going to wear it well and sport it well.
I know, but in New Orleans, to get those beads, doesn't the lady have to do something?
We're in Winchester.
We're in Winchester.
And we're videoing today, so we gotta keep that,
I know. So,
Keep those
folks,
vision out there.
the first thing he asked me, the new director of school, will you give me your beads? And I say, what do I have to do for you to get my beads?
That's right. And that's
the other way around.
See, I told you, Carrie, you never know what's going to come out of my mouth.
But here's the joy. The joy that is we're making connections already.
I know, you had my beads. Not my body, but my beads.
That's right.
I'm gonna ask the first question.
Yes, sir.
Why'd you want to come back home?
You know, that is a great question, and I greatly appreciate it. As I said in my interview, when I think about Franklin County and I go back through my educational experiences, Franklin County, I'm going to use the same line that I said in my interview, it worked for me. I mean, I could sit here in time where we would not have enough time, because not only can I name teachers per grade, but I can give you experiences per grade that I've had. And so that those encounters alone said to me, when the opportunity presented itself, it is now full circle for me to be educated, raised in Franklin County, to have served as a teacher in Franklin County, to have served as an administrator in Franklin County, and now be able to come and help lead and take our district to the next level. Why would I not be given that opportunity? And I'm glad that I was afforded that opportunity by our board.
Okay, now, Ricky, now, the next question that's coming up, because I have heard this, Carrie. Are you moving your family to Franklin County?
Yes, we are. I'm moving here to Franklin County. You know what I'm excited about? My mother lives here. My sisters, brothers, uncles. I have many relatives here. And I've always had this fixation. Now I'm about to let a cat out the bag. Have this fixation about tiny house living. And so I'm looking forward to getting me a small piece of property and doing me a tiny house, and I'm ready and excited for that endeavor.
But your family's not moving here.
Yes, so I'm coming here because what happens is we have children. My son is about to graduate high school, and we believe we're going to take and go to UT Chattanooga. Then my wife's sister passed away some 7 years ago, and we brought our nephew into our home, and we have raised him, and he is now at MTSU. And so with us having our resident, my wife staying there with my youngest son, and me coming here, then we are able to split this parenting process where one's going to be in Chattanooga, one's going to be at MTSU, I'm going to be here, my wife's going to be there with my youngest, so we're excited.
How old's your youngest?
He's going to middle school.
Okay, so he's in middle school.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was going to say, when your son goes to college, will you then relocate here? You don't think when he goes to high school that you will want him to be here with you?
You know, it's one of those, we as a family, we have our mindsets and our devotion to our children. We look at all components. And so with that, you know, he loves his daddy now. He is a daddy's boy. And so who knows? You know, because he's one of those, he may just decide, you know what, Daddy, this is what I want to do.
Because the reason I wanted you to air that on the air,
Absolutely.
that is out there, and that is what I've heard. Is he moving his family to Franklin County? Because even though you're going to live in a tiny house, and you're going to be there, you're going to be where your children are and your wife in their activities. You know, if they have this or that, you're going to be in there. And it's hard to split loyalties, and that's going to be a challenge for you, as I think.
Well, what's great is I balance well. I know exactly my focus as a district leader to catapult our district to the next level. I know it's going to require a substantial amount of time, and that's something that my wife and my family, we totally understand. What I greatly appreciate is my wife is so tapped in to my educational endeavors that she fully accepts, respects, knowing that in Franklin County, listen, it is not a 7 to 3. It's a 24-hour job.
That's what I know.
Oh, absolutely. And by doing that, I'm rooted and grounded in such a way that my work ethic most definitely will speak for itself, in so much that I'm looking forward to working with the community. There are many ideas that I already have, and I'm already itching at the bits to get to the district so that I can start. It's great that the Franklin County is on spring break this week. And so during my spring break, I'm actually coming here, and even prior to even being accepted as the new director of schools, I'd already started some collaborations because I was just sharing things with different teachers that are here. And so I'm actually coming next week, of course, speaking with a women's group. And then in addition to that, I am conducting a professional development for some new teachers here in the district, as well as meeting with Mr. Bean's current, I think it's his leadership team, a group of individuals on next week as well. So I'm starting those processes to start getting out there and making those connections.
Okay, I want to tell you something else. I listened to your acceptance speech on the radio. I didn't come to the meeting because Joanne can't hear. She can talk, but she can't hear. And so I thought I don't need to be there because I can't hear anything behind me, and I do well to hear it in front of me. But anyway, you talked about unity, and I wanted to give you this little thing. After it was over, I called Dr. Alsop because I know him, and I asked him, I told him I was sorry and I asked him, I said, how are you feeling or something, or maybe he even volunteered. He said, Joanne, all I've ever wanted was Franklin County to be the best it could be, and I am behind Kerry Holman 100%, and anything he needs from me, I'm there. And I thought, he didn't have to say that to me.
Right.
I wasn't on the board.
That's the way he feels.
But he said that to me. And so I wanted to relay that when you're thinking about unity, I didn't know exactly what you meant by that because I really pride Franklin County in being united. I don't see divisions that other people see or want to create. And I was going to tell you, this is just a little advice from Joanne.
Yes.
Don't look for trouble in that unity phase. We may be diverse, but it's economic diversity. It's Sewanee is different than, we talked about that, about all these other, but there are not other problems that people want to create.
Yes.
So do not get on that bandwagon, or you're going to have to look at Joanne, and I'm going to take those beads back.
Hey, don't take my beads back. Let me share with you in response to my acceptance speech. When I speak of unity, I'm in regards particularly speaking on the notion of my 26, 27 years in education. I have seen how important partnerships are in education. That being with our parents, with the community, and with the schools. So when I say the word unity, I'm looking and wanting to empower parents and the community to be in such a unified fashion to know and appreciate the value of education. That yes, we're living in times where education is not the most favorable thing for individuals because so many things are come out of education. And so as a leader, I just believe in the power of helping people to understand, not undermining an individual, but helping them to understand that we are truly in this thing together. It's not just a school system, but it's the school system, it's our community, it's our parents. And here's the win. And I've seen this work. I've seen it work. That when we understand that it's not I, it's not you, but it's we, the we then takes hold and catapults a win for the students. When we look at this, we have to be very mindful of our children from pre-K all the way to 12th grade. To hear you, Ms. Davis, commend and recognize our student, and I'm already speaking from a Franklin County standpoint. our student being recognized and receiving a scholarship, $35,000 scholarship out of 20,000 plus applicants. That's the type of information that we will continue to flood our county with. Because you know what, my philosophy is very simple. There are always more people doing right than there are doing wrong. And so as a leader, I've got to ensure and make sure that we capitalize on all the positive things that are going on. Yes, negative things are going to happen. People are going to complain. But here's the joy. We're still going to capitalize on what's going great in our district. I would hope that this young man's face is is placed on marquees, that business people are capitalizing on this young man, that any organizations that are having meetings, let him come speak. Because, he's just one of the 4,900 plus students that we have in our district. And so if that's one, how many more are out there but have not yet been recognized? So that's my wave, and that's when I think about that unity.
All right, so one question. You said parent involvement. That is, you grew up in Franklin County, you remember going to ball games on Friday night, because you think parent involvement, usually it's with athletics or something extracurricular. But even then, going to ball games on Friday night back in the day, you're sitting 4 deep at the fence trying to see a football game and parking across the street over at the gas station watching from the hill because you couldn't get inside the stadium. Parent involvement now, parents come to ball games, but we don't get the community involved. There's no one at football games hardly. They're better turnouts this year because they won some games. Mm-hmm. Basketball at Franklin County High School, I don't know how many games I've gone to where 100 people maybe, max in the crowd, maybe 150, and then, softball, just called a softball game the other night. I think maybe there was 25, 30 people sitting over there watching the game. Mm-hmm. Called Holman's game yesterday, and I was even more disappointed there. I counted 22 people in the stands at the Holman game from the Holman side. So how do we get the communities? And, well, I guess one, how do you get the parents involved outside of athletics? But two, how do you get the community involved with everything we're doing?
Absolutely. Once again, another great question, because when you think about parent involvement, parent engagement, it goes beyond that of just the athletics. It goes beyond that of academics. But we have to look at the fine arts as well. We've got to, as I said in my interview, that my vision is to empower, to encourage, and to enhance. And when you look at those three words, that's for all stakeholders, whether it be you are a student in our district, whether you are a parent in our district or a community. So we as the leaders have to be intentional. We have to look at, just because we've always done it a certain way, doesn't mean that's the way that it's going to always be done. What I've been taught is the message can still be the same. The method is what has to change. So one of the things, the approaches, we as leaders, we can sit down and collaborate to see how can we get parents involved. That's the leadership side of it. The other side is we have to be transparent enough to sit down with parents and say, could you share with us why you have not, or why do you feel parents have not embraced this whole opportunity of getting involved? Then in addition to that, then we have to look at our student population. So you're going to see the stance that I take is all about voice, hearing from individuals, because we have community partners, we have our great representatives, our state officials, our local officials, our teachers, our principals, as well as our parents and kids. All of those are extremely important to our success. So success not only just in academics, but also in our engagement. So how do we do this? I could give idea after idea, but that's just, I have some ideas, but I also want to reach out to those principals to have them to get ideas, as well as community partners on how do we empower and enhance our connections through collaborations. When you think about basketball games, when you think about football games, when you think about softball or baseball or soccer, when you think about band and fine arts, I could begin right now to start rolling off idea after idea. One of the things that under my leadership at my current school, at our football games, we started doing halftime activities for parents, where we would do halftime mathematic drills. and you have parents to come out on the field, and I would have individuals from the press box, and we would give out math problems and have parents to run up and down the field trying to get the right answer. It may be that we're highlighting businesses, just like you all did this morning. Who are our patriots that are giving back to our community? Let's highlight them as well. If we have children who are artistically inclined, if we have children who are musically inclined, there are events that are going on. Let's get our children at these events, because if you get the children there, guess who else is going to come? Parents. And so with the artistic side, you have children who are extreme artists. I heard that you all are doing research on all the different schools that used to exist here in Franklin County. Learning goes beyond a classroom. And can you imagine a child and his or her parent on the square or in a business and them being able to see their work of art? What would that do to their well-being? When you see that you have our very own scholar who has metamorphosed and produced such a piece that is recognized at the national level of such, why those are the types of things parents need to hear more of, so that they know, I've got to get involved. As I said at the board meeting this week, let not tonight be the first night that you show up, and let not tonight be the last night. Because if we're going to do this together, it's going to take us doing it and really coming together and being okay to recognize and support and celebrate. I just believe it.
Carrie, I think that the one word that sums it all up is children, students have to have ownership. They have to have ownership in the school. If you talk about taking care of the inside of a school, if they have ownership in it, you're not going to find them writing on the walls.
Absolutely.
You're not going to find them doing things that are destructive. So when students have ownership, parents follow suit.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just, to me, that's the bottom line.
Okay, I have a question, and then I want Iris to talk about how you feel about the third grade retention, because that coincides with the state. But my question, Carrie, is this. So many times jobs are filled before jobs are posted. You know, somebody gets the inside scoop that there's going to be a job. They call the person that is in charge of hiring, and there I said, well, we have to post it, but you're the one that's going to get the job. I don't like that practice. I think jobs should be posted, and those people should be called in, like you did with this process, before they're hired. And that has gone on since the beginning of time. Not only there, it's in offices. You know, the job is posted, but somebody that knew somebody, if you know somebody, you're going to get that job. And so how do you feel about that problem?
Absolutely. And I appreciate that question. I'm going to go to a statement that I have lived by for the last 27 years in education, that I truly look at problems as opportunities. And so my perspective is that we have to do everything with integrity. That when and yes, we know that in times past, things like that have happened. It's not just in education. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, and I'm like you. I believe that each individual should be given the opportunity,
The chance
to at least seek the possibility of being able to hold one of those positions. So in that, it goes back to transparency, that we have to most definitely, if there are positions, first of all, I'm going to always ask the question, why is there a position? Why is it the position? And then what is the significance of the position? And then therefore, there should always be some type of job description that is aligned to any type of job. And then it is posted so that individuals throughout our county can take the time to at least consider, whether or not he or she would want to apply for said position. So most definitely, I believe, and I will stand true to integrity, to know that I want individuals, because as a leader, it's not just for me to lead, but it's helped to catapult and move people into leadership positions. And how do we do that? We help by training them, by modeling for them, and being transparent.
Well, the questions I'm asking you are what I hear on the street.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and that's some of the things that I hear on the street. Okay, now Iris, you want to talk with the new director of schools about the third grade retention? And I know it's been modified.
Yeah, that's what I would like to.
Well, I don't serve on education anymore, so I'm not privy to everything that's going on in the committee system, and there has been no education bills come through on the House floor. So I did talk with the chairman of instruction education yesterday, the sub-chairman, Scott Sapicki, about third grade retention, what's going on over there. But before I do talk about what the state's doing about third grade retention, I would like to ask Mr. Holman, what's your opinion of children in third grade being promoted to fourth grade that can't read? Why do you think there has been such a pushback from parents holding state legislators responsible for a third grade retention law that had only one motive, only one goal in mind, and that was to make sure we didn't continue to pass children through the system that couldn't read? And so I think people can say what they want to about how many kids are going to be held back and this and that and the other, but what I am not hearing from directors of schools, because there was a lot of pushback from them about the third grade retention law, and I will be the first to say that a lot of things we do up there has good intentions, and then the actual, when you try to implement it, it is more difficult, and so we go back a lot of times and redo things. But my question is to you is why do directors of schools and people in leadership in our school systems think that it's such a bad thing to draw a line in the sand, as I have said, and said this is where it stops, and we're going to try to help these children that can't, that are not, don't have a good grasp of reading, because that is so important, but we're at the third grade level. We continue to promote them on. They'll graduate and they can't read, and that is evidenced by the fact that that a lot of our kids are going into our college systems and having to take 2 years of remedial courses even to start their college career. So obviously what we're doing is not working. So, and then we don't get pushback from parents. They're mad about the fact that we are requiring them to be held back, but why aren't they upset about the fact that they are not on point and they don't have a grasp of reading? So I would like to know from you, what is your opinion about the third grade retention law? Why if you do, what are your opinions about it? But why, as a person in leadership, would it be okay? And it hasn't been addressed in the school systems before the state legislature had to get involved to stop children being promoted that do not read.
Okay, thank you so much. And that's a very compact question. Mm-hmm. And so let's look at it from components. Particularly to our viewers, one of the things, and we have to appreciate and support our local as well as our state officials in their endeavors to at least bring to the table concerns. That is a very fair statement that our local as well as our state representatives have concerns about what's going on in education. And so with that, when we look and we start dissecting any type of law, what happens is individuals tend to take and look at just the title and not really take the time to dig very deep to understand what the position that our state officials feel are important. And so with that, with the retention law, when it came out, the very first thing that parents went into an uproar, or school officials, we started thinking, oh my gosh, where's this coming from? Is because you start hearing just the word third grade retention. And so that by itself, we have to pause. We have to now take the time as leaders to sit down with parents to explain to them why the law came about, the reason behind it, then look at, okay, let's go and truly start digging to look at if children are in times past, and that's a very fair statement, in times past have been promoted but not be at the level what he or she should, that should have always been a concern. But when we start even looking at what does that mean, a child cannot read, that statement within itself, we have to help parents to understand how is that defined by individuals. That if a child cannot read, is it because he or she has a lacking in their phonemic awareness? Is it that he or she is not fluent in their reading ability? Or is it because it is defined based on the number of years that the child is showing a deficit in his or her reading abilities? Because a child may be in third grade, and because a lack of literacy, not that it's completely absent, but I would use the term a lack thereof, because I can be in third grade and be at maybe a second grade reading level and yet still be promoted. Well, when you start looking at that, then we can start, it's almost like a buffet, that you start looking at all the different components. Well, if I am considered, particularly that's going to come, that decision is going to come based off of a state test. And so when you're having children, and I could talk about this all day, I get excited talking about education, because when you have a child who is going to take a state test, let's put it in perspective. We're now going to give a child who is a third grader, fourth grader, fifth grader, sixth grader, and on. A child's going to take the test in April. That test then is going to measure what a child has been exposed to since the month of August. Now, all of us, educated, but there are things that we sometimes cannot recall because of how much time has lapsed in between. Well, but then the other thing to that on our state test is to understand, and this is where we got, as a leader, I would most definitely help parents to see and make the connection so that, yes, it's important to have voice, but have voice and understand what you're then speaking in regards to. As when they are looking at the state tests, and for example, a child is going to take the ELA portion of the test. That particular test may have 40 or 50 questions. I'd have to go back and look at the framework to see how many questions third grade is going to have. What parents have to then understand, according to the state, there are state standards that must be taught in third grade. And so when a person, and I could show parents, here are all the standards that the state is saying that a child must show that he or she knows knowledge thereof. Here's what we got to make sure also parents understand. But of those state standards, when the child sits down and takes that test, there may only be 2 or 3 questions on the test for that standard. Well, if I then as a child do not fare well on one particular standard, and our state tests are designed in such a way that there are some standards that are heavily tested, and then there are some standards that may not be tested as much.
Depending on the year. They kind of
Depending
flip-flop.
on the year. That is correct.
Yes.
And so with that, all a parent sees is, oh my goodness, my child was at the basic level. Well, then I've got to help parents understand the different performance levels that a school and the educational system is measured on. You have your basic, you have your approaching, you have your meets expectations and exceeds expectations. And so what happens is in those grades, each grade is going to have a different number of tested items. But then in addition to that, it's going to then, you have to look at how many questions for that particular standard may have been tested. So I would most definitely continue to take the stand on helping parents to understand their partnerships at home are equally as important. The school, yes, we are there to educate children, but home is there to educate a child too. And so by doing this bridging of educational opportunities together, that's what it's going to take. And to help put the parents at ease, we want to make sure that our third graders, if they're going to be promoted, that they can successfully do well in fourth grade. If we see that they cannot, based on their state test, then now in the law, as it is so written thus far, there's still some support layers there to assist, because you're going to have children that are coming from many different backgrounds who, one may be a child that has an IEP that needs additional time and support, that has a learning disability. You have children who are sitting in your schools who are EL learners. You have, so the schools, based on what the law is, and I know there's been several amendments and things that are being done, and I do appreciate that it is on the table for discussion, because we can't ignore the fact that literacy is extremely important for the well-being and the success of children matriculating from one grade to the next.
Can I weigh in just 1 second on that same thing? Because I was going to ask you about that later on. I'm not opposed to third grade retention. I think it's important. The part of it that bothers me, and I think there's been new bills introduced that maybe address what I'm getting at. When you base whether or not, as you say, a child can or cannot read, you're talking about how that child is performed on TCAP, which is a criterion reference test based on the standards of education in Tennessee. It's not a reading test. So I think there's been discussion in the bill that Representative White and I think Sapecki as well, that maybe that they would consider adding other approved state assessments, such as benchmark assessments. And I saw language in the bill that Representative White had that said that if on the latest benchmark exam, if they scored in the 50th percentile, that they probably would be promoted. How do you feel about that?
When I say can't read, that was really not, they're not reading on grade level,
Yes,
should we say.
right,
They
yes.
can read, they're not reading on grade level,
Yes.
and so we said they have to read on third, they should be able to read.
Iris, real quick, can I ask a question? Because we're talking about that, and, reading on grade level, you look at the numbers. Outside of professional baseball, our numbers are horrible. Like, if we're a professional baseball team, we're going to the Hall of Fame with 30%. But 30% is atrocious in anything else in life. And 30% would be a huge growth for some of our schools right now, if we can only hit 30%. So, I guess two parts here. One, why do you think that number is so low? And it's not just here in Franklin County, it's across
It's
the whole
statewide.
state.
Statewide.
So why is it so low? And two, how do we come Shaquille O'Neal at the free throw line? At least get 50 of them.
Yeah, the thing is, and once again, it has to be where all stakeholders really look at, when you start looking at data, depending upon how you are reviewing it, can make things look great or can make things look dismal.
Absolutely.
And so because of that, I could show or sit down with stakeholders, parents, whoever, and let them see the number of state standards that are being taught in each grade for each subject, and looking at how, as I talked about earlier, the message is still the same. Education is paramount. That is the message. The method has got to be different. That the way that I was taught in school and now the way that children are now taught in school, it does have to vary. And so we have to be very creative to address those deficits, because there are more and more deficits. The realization, and it's one of those that I'm like you, we can't dismiss any of it. You think about the number, how technology and how the impact it now has on student engagement as well as student learning, and how that now pans into our society and our world. We as educators have got to be so creative in helping to continue to show movement. So when you start looking at data, and you say that you have a district or school that only 30% of our children are expectations or exceeding expectations. Okay, well, from the outside looking in, that does look like, oh my gosh, that is dismal. How do we get to the 50 and the 60%? Well, you do that through incremental steps. And here's how often I use this analogy. You have crawlers, you have walkers, you have runners, and you have sprinters. The common denominator to each of those is movement. And so as a school, we've got to meet children who need that help to advance them from crawlers to walkers, from walkers to runners, from runners to sprinters. And likening to that, same with our educators. We have educators who are sprinting, and they are making it happen in their classrooms every day. But then we have those individuals who need some additional support to help show them, how do I get this message across to teachers, to students? Because as bills are introduced, as data is presented, then it's the job of leadership to take the time to meet with not just the leaders, not just elected officials, but also the teachers and even the students. Sit down and have student data conversations. You know what? Here's where you were on your last test. Because here's the piece about data. On a state test, because it's criterion reference, for a child to go from approaching to meets expectations or to exceeds expectations literally can be by the getting one additional or two additional questions right. But that's information that a parent may not know because it's not addressed. It just simply says, oh my gosh, my child was approaching. Well, the follow-up question to that should be, how far away was my child getting to meeting expectations? And when you take the time to show that to a parent and say, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Uncle, Auntie, I want you to know that your child was only 2 questions away from meeting expectations as it is stated with the state. And then that helps them have conversations at the dinner table. That helps them start empowering their child to do more. It helps them to say, let's spend a little bit more time reading, because I'll be the first to say literacy is paramount. It's everything that exists. To pick up a paper and be able to sit and read it, it requires literacy skills. But from education, that's easy for us to talk about. Now we have to break down what literacy looks like, not to undermine anyone, but to help them understand. Because I believe once we have an understanding, when you know better, what have they always taught me? When you know better,
You do better.
You do better. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I really like what you're saying about involving parents at an early stage.
Yes, ma'am.
And letting them know where their child's weaknesses are.
Yeah.
I heard a lot about standards, but I think the test, the TCAP test, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is more or less a test that is not exact. The questions on the test don't necessarily align with the standards that the children are being taught in the classrooms. So wouldn't it be a good idea, and I've heard this conversation, that we have our own test in Tennessee that aligns to Tennessee standards? That would, to me, make much more sense as to how to evaluate a child's proficiency in education if what was being taught in the classroom is actually on the test, and I think you've alluded to that tonight. So I think that is totally messed up. Because I'm beginning to get through my thick head that the TCAP test doesn't necessarily align with the standards that the children are being taught. And I think we need to look at another thing that I've heard a conversation about at the education level before I left it, and which I loved being there, I serve at the will of the speaker. He didn't put me on education this year. But as in each grade, define what those standards look like. So, we know, and the parents know going in, this is what this is what your child is expected to achieve this year to be proficient and move on to the next grade, but everybody's on, and we know as we move through what the standards are. I don't know if that happens now or not, but that is some of the things that I think. And I also think that I think to me, it's horrible and I know we have to do this because we have to have the data, but to require a third grader to have the pressure of doing the dance and making sure that they do well on that test. Some kids don't test well,
Yes,
and we
ma'am.
passed legislation last year. I carried the legislation to give them more time. You can request more time on these tests. I don't know if that helps or not, but still, to say that a third grader has to, this is it, kid. You're going to do it today or not, or you're going
Right.
to, you're going to be retained.
Yes.
I think, am I wrong in this thinking, that teachers know the children. They don't have to have a test to know that child is not proficient and is not going to do well if they pass them on to fourth grade, because they know that child needs some more help. They know who the crawlers are. They know everything about their children. They don't have to have a test to tell them that. And I wish that we would get back to giving the teachers more authority over their classrooms, so that when they make those decisions, they say, they have the conversations with you and the parents, and it's not always based on the test. They have a standard. They know what going in, what they have to teach for that child to be proficient and to move on. But it's the teacher's call based on her relationship with that child, because I think, am I wrong in saying the teacher knows? The teacher knows if that child is ready to move on or not. And so I really have a problem with all this testing. That's my thing.
Can I make one?
Yeah, sure.
Just one. I think that our teachers across the county are now in a mindset, they're taking a real hard look at what's going on in K1 and 2.
Right.
And they are really aware, because that's where the retention should really take place
start.
to help
Exactly.
with this. Yeah.
And I think that because, as difficult as this conversation has been, and as much pushback that we've gotten as state reps and senators that passed this legislation, it at least started a conversation that really needed to be started.
Yes.
We needed to say, good, bad, or ugly, it's a problem, and we need to address it. Maybe we didn't choose exactly the right way, but to address it. But here are some of the things that yesterday, I'm going to read what I was told yesterday about third grade retention, and you tell me if this makes any sense to you. Because I'm not there anymore, and I'm not hearing all the testimony. But approaching on the third grade, if you are approaching on the third grade TCAP, then the last universal screener provided by the state, given as a test, then the student scores 50% percentile or higher. They move on to fourth grade with supports available to the student. Is that better?
Yes.
That better?
Yes.
And then summer school and tutoring, K through 8th, is going to be paid for 100% by the state. So they're not just doing for the K through 12, K through 3 now, it's K through 8. And they're going to, and then third grade, the other thing that we talked about was starting children later. You know, when I met with y'all, it started them at 7 years old instead of moving them on younger, because they've historically, somebody out there said the older they start first grade, the better sometimes that they do, the more mature they are. So I jotted this down yesterday, see if this makes sense. First grade at the end with universal screener, 50% or higher go on. Below 50% are retained. Supports provided in, we're going to have tutors, unless the student turns 8 before 8:15, and then they must be promoted to the second grade.
Yeah, if you hold them back at that age,
Right.
the end result is going to be that you're going to have 19-year-olds in high school.
Right.
And that's bad, because
Right.
sometimes they choose not to complete.
So we're talking about holding them back in the first grade instead of holding them back.
Exactly. Exactly.
And there's, like, if they score 50% or higher, they go on. But if it's below 50%, they're retained, but with the supports necessary to help them get.
And I think in this, the new legislation,
You're right.
the amendment, They're also saying that if the child is held back in kindergarten, first or second grade, that child will have a tutor.
Yes, the tutor.
The whole next year.
Yeah, the whole next
To
year.
help them catch
Yeah.
up at that
So,
level.
yes, and so I think all of that is a good piece of legislation, and from what I can understand, everybody, the stakeholders are on board with that. And you look like you're happy with it.
I
I
am.
hope you're happy with it. But I do think as much controversy that the third grade retention law caused, it was a good thing because it got us talking. It got educators, it got educators saying, and looking at, and I'm not saying that they didn't before, but it is paramount, in my opinion, to have a very strong, the best of the best in in kindergarten through third. Because that is where the foundation starts. If you get them a good foundation, they're able to move on and do well in school. Because if you can establish a love for reading and they don't feel inadequate, I think I'm right in this. I've always heard that. My son he did not reading. He got stuck, and we still struggle with that. But I do know it's important, and I do think that teachers need more, I don't know what exactly the word is, but they need to be the person we're looking to in that classroom for information. I don't always trust these tests to be adequate data about what that child's doing, because a child is more than a test.
And, I so appreciate, you almost had me over here about in tears. I really appreciate hearing that you all, people recognize that teachers know their children. That yes, I understand, yes, I get that tests are going to be given, but children are more than a test, and I appreciate hearing that. And then statements in regards to establishing early a love for reading, a love for learning, because the conversation is out there, and I think it know it merits great discussion, because it cannot be dismissed. As stated in the law, and I appreciate you pulling out certain points. For example, it goes back to, once again, when you hear the word university screener, we can sit here and we can talk about those things all day long. But now, as a school leader, it's the job that I've got to make sure that parents understand, what is a universal screener? What does that mean? Because it truly is another assessment. It's another piece of the puzzle. I'll give you another analogy that I often use when it comes to data. That as specified, teachers know their children. They're walking into the room 180 days. I know what Carrie can, what Carrie struggles with, and what Carrie has excelled at in my classroom. And that should have some merit to it. And so with that, with the universal screener, it's an assessment to see and see where children are. Well, that's a part of the analogy I'm about to use. Pictures. Every piece of information that we get on a child, it becomes a snapshot. If I challenged every last one of us right now to pull out our phones and pull up a picture, you could immediately talk about that event, that time, what was going on. But that's just one piece of it. But if I said, pull up all the pictures that you have that pertain to your family reunion or your class reunion, you're going to have a greater picture of everything that happens. And so likening to that, in our educational system, we have to have many pictures. The literacy is one piece. Numeracy is another piece. Relationships, student-teacher relationships is one piece. Parent and family engagement is one piece. Community partnership is one piece. When you start putting this photo album together, look at what we can accomplish. Look at what we can accomplish. And I can respect conversations that if I veered away from it, then that would not be right. We have to be okay to hear what's out there, and now let's talk about it and see how we can work together. Because here's what I was telling principals and what I was telling teachers. When you think about the retention law, and I was sharing it with some teachers, I said, so our job is to talk the positive language and tell our parents, our children will be promoted because we're going to ensure that they are getting the necessary skill set that we are going to be able to measure from picture after picture how well our children are doing, and then we're going to celebrate it. We're going to celebrate it.
I appreciate what you said about the teacher being involved, but from all the bills I see, they're still holding on to that one piece of state control and not leaving it with the local level to make the decisions. So I don't know how that's going to turn out.
Within third grade
Yes.
retention. I've not been privy to those conversations, but, you know, I think there's a level of, the conversation needs to continue. They need to feel like, maybe I'm just talking from a person that's not involved, but I think we need to feel like as people that pass legislation with good intentions, bad consequences, that we've got your attention. This is what we want the state education to look like. Do we have your attention? And I think once we're proven that you've got our attention, maybe it kicks back to the local level, but they're not comfortable. I'm not saying that I'm thinking this is what they're thinking, but they're not comfortable with that being accomplished if it's kicked to the local level, because the local level, don't mean to be mean here, but the local level didn't get the job done. For whatever reason, we had a problem. We have a problem with children not being proficient at grade level and moving them on. Now, I personally don't think that is always the teacher's fault, or I think there's so much bureaucracy in the system that it holds back our leadership, our directors of schools, everybody else from being able to do what they actually need to do. I want to get back to basics and say we want to teach our children reading, writing, and arithmetic, and we want those teachers in those classrooms to be able to tell the principal or whoever is coming in to evaluate them, they can sit down and have a conversation about those children, and everybody knows exactly where that child is without any testing. And that's what I'm getting at. I think we have gotten too far down the rabbit hole about all this testing and data, because in my mind, it is a moneymaker for a lot of our money goes into these testing where we hire people to do the testing, and it's gotten to be a monster that maybe started out to be something where we just wanted some data, and then we said, oh, it's profitable. You follow the money in most every situation, and by doing that, I think we've gotten so far away from what we're all trying to do, and that's educate our kids, because we know the one-room schoolhouse with 25 kids at kindergartens to 18 years old, they had a better education than what we're getting accomplished today with all the support and the money and everything else we throw at education. We just got to get back to basics. Now, how you get there, I don't know.
We're testing our kids to death.
You are testing your kids today,
and we spend much more time.
You should not be. You should be spending all that time you're testing. You could be educating.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's exactly right. And I don't know how to get there. That's the frustrating part about serving in education, because to me it's so simple. Let the teachers teach. Give them the money they need to get the job done. And maybe the money that we're spending on all of these organizations that test, we could put back into the actual simple education and get our kids standards. Everybody agrees with them. This is what a kindergarten, first, second, third, all the way up needs to be taught in the state of Tennessee. We all agree. And let's get the job done.
Well,
I don't know how to get that accomplished.
another thing too, Iris, I think we spend way too much time teaching, and I hate to use this term, but I don't know anything else. Teaching to the test.
I mean,
and when
sure.
you do that, those children are missing out on so
much
of the things.
creativity.
Yes.
I mean, what a teacher can do in a classroom by just being absolutely free to say, I had a teacher that taught crochet. I mean, she thought it was important, and that's teaching motor skills, and that's teaching,
But you don't have time to do that.
You don't have
now.
time to do anything except teach to the test. So anyway, I appreciate your philosophy of going to the teacher and talking with her about her students. And even though maybe you felt negative about third grade retention, maybe the law, in your mind you thought this is ridiculous and I don't like it because I don't have control at the local level, but you didn't tell your teachers that it was a negative. You told them, let's approach it as a positive. There are so many of directors of schools that contacted us as legislators, and they were throwing down about it. It was awful, get this taken care of, and they weren't making a positive spin on the hand they were dealt. And I think that sometimes, you know, I'm a rule follower. I don't like the rules, but I'm going to follow them until I can get them changed. And I appreciate your philosophy that this was a negative maybe, but we're going to make it a positive, and we're going to turn it around and say, and that calms people when leadership can say, not the best situation, but here's what we're going to do with it. And we're going to try to make it a good thing for our kids. And I think and I will tell you that legislators listen. When we get those comments, exactly what we're doing right here with amending the third grade retention and trying to make it more palatable and still get the job done, is what we've done. But you put a positive spin on it and calm people down rather than join the fray of this is the worst thing that's ever happened. So I think that's a better approach.
So we've had people call in, and I've got questions for them. One of them was a statement, and when you were talking about the parents and the kids learning at an early age, they said parents should be more involved in the kids, 4, 5, and 6 years old, and teaching them at that point before they even get to school. Start reading, because honestly, that's where you start learning as a kid. Mom read books to me when I was little. I started learning the words, started reading them myself. That's how it works there. So that was one of the comments. Had a question called in. What's your stance on discipline in the school system? How do you feel about disciplining and ways to discipline children?
Absolutely. So when you start looking at discipline, once again, the term itself, everyone sees that as punitive. And so we have to look at what has caused the discipline. How often do we take the time to sit down with students? And here's another piece that I believe. We have to look at talking with students rather than talking at students. Are they going to make their own decisions? Yes. Why? Because they're children. But there has to be consistency is key to discipline. And that it starts at the top from the central office, really meeting once again with principals, meeting with teachers, because we got to be very careful that we leave our emotions out of when we get ready to discipline children. We have to look at what has caused this, where did it come from, were there signs, and let's sit down and have a conversation. But there has to be a consistency with discipline. In my leadership at the school that I've now served for the last 12 years, one of the very first things that we did when I got there, we only have three school rules that govern our building. And the reason for that, through training, going to workshops, you understand that in middle school particularly, a child's going to have 5 or 6 different teachers. Well, I go to one class and the teacher has 8 rules. I go to another class and the teacher has 5 rules. Go to another class and the teacher has no rules. Then I have school rules. Then I have home rules, right? And so you having a child that has all these types of rules, and they, at the end of the day, they're 11, 12, and 13. Not to even mention our elementary children who are very young. So we have to have a systematic approach to what is our win for how do we minimize discipline. And it is through taking the time to be looking at putting responsibility back on the child, having him or her, to be able to explain what he or she did that caused this discipline. But then, listen, in life, there are choices that you get to make all day long. But what I often tell children, you don't get to choose the consequences. So they have to understand if you do wrong, there are steps that will happen. And not only do children have to understand that, but our leaders have to understand that, our teachers have to understand that, and our parents have to understand it, because parents are sending their children to school to learn, to be safe, to be nurtured. And we cannot have institutions, our schools, to be places where kids can feel like they can just come and be disruptive to the learning environment. So there have to be things in place. Thus, the reason we have stop signs and red lights in society. There comes a time you have to stop. There comes a time you have to slow down. But children have to know what that means and what it looks like in our schools, as do parents.
Okay. And the third question I had was about budget. And was two parts, honestly. One was, are you gonna be part of this year's budget process, since you are gonna get saddled with that budget when you take over? And two, there's a perceived gap between the school system and the county commission. How do you feel that you can bridge that?
Okay, so the first part to your question, you asked would I be a part of the budget? Well, the realization is until we have gone into, we're in negotiations with contract, and so budgets have already now been submitted, so I will not be a part of those because they've already been submitted. But however, upon taking office to the role of director of schools, I will have an intricate part of working with the finance department as well as with our county commission to really sit down, have conversation, because I need to learn from them, and I'm sure they would want to learn some things from me as the leader of the school district to see how we will to forge forward in looking at how can we work together to make sure that the educational system here in Franklin County is one that is going to be open to all, but also in such a way that we're not going to just be spending money because we want to spend money. We have to be very cognizant of where monies come from, how then those monies are allocated, but then we have to make sure that we understand that we're utilizing it in its best form.
I'd react to that too, Ricky. I don't know. I don't see that there's that big a gap between the two. I feel like that since the education committee from the commission has started functioning again, we meet every Tuesday following board meetings. It's very productive. They are well aware of the budget that's in the works now. They had our whole budget. They've gone over it from year past. And I think we're closer as far as working together than we have been in the recent past. And I hope it continues in that direction.
That's the questions I got.
Well, I think we need to, I can talk about other things in the that are coming up in the future, but let's open up the phone lines, 967-2201. If you have a question for our new Director of Education, Dr. Holman, or for our head of the school board, P.J. Walker. If you have a question for them, call. But now, while we're waiting on those calls, I want to say that the Republican ladies are having a breakfast next Thursday, this coming Thursday, and Carrie Holman will be a guest there. And the ladies will really drill you, Carrie. You will love the ladies, but they're excited about wanting to meet the new director of schools, and Sandy Schultz, one of your board members, will be there to introduce Dr. Holman. So that's Thursday at 10:30 at Sunrise in Deckard.
So I had a question while waiting. Somebody calls up. When you were doing your interview with the school board, you presented a 100-day plan. What's in that plan?
So in that, I have a 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. And because I don't have it in front of me, but I can go through several of the things, the components on the 30-day plan. Within the 30-day, I specified that I most definitely want to take the time to meet with all of the leaders. I want to meet with all departments to establish those working relationships. In addition to that, even conducting town hall meetings, roundtable discussions, because I want to familiarize myself with all stakeholders, because once again, I need everyone to see that we're going to do this together. I'm going to be so bold to say that our district, we will elevate ourselves not only to local recognition, but to state recognition and to national recognition, because we're going to work together. We're going to elevate and move forward. We're going to start baby steps, but we're going to catapult to those levels. In that 60-day plan is even, the 30-day plan, also meeting with the elected officials, because I really want to sit down and just learn from them. I want to hear their thoughts, and I want them to be able to ask me questions and then me share things with them as well. in that 60-day plan, looking at by then, the first 30 days of school we're in, and I would hope that by then we have been able to establish some types of community outreaches so that parents are able to come to different locations and we can go to their locations to share, because I want to keep before them things that are going on. Transparency will be a part of my leadership style. Keeping people informed will be a part of my leadership style, because that's how you encourage individuals. That's how you empower individuals, and that's how you enhance individuals. And then within that, I talk about forming TAC, PAC, and SAC. TAC being a Teacher Advisory Council, PAC being a Parent Advisory Council, and SAC being a Student Advisory Council, because our children can articulate well, and they can share their thoughts. One of the other things that I'm looking forward to doing is we have in our county here, we have a plethora of retired individuals who their work cannot go unnoticed. Their work, I know they have a lot to offer our educators, because our educational system nationally are going through some tumultuous times, but I still believe through my positive perspective that it's one of those, to be optimistic, that I want to rally all of our retired educators from Franklin County together, because I know that they have a great wealth of knowledge that they can share.
I've always thought that was a good idea. To have them, they can come as tutors, they can come and help in so many areas, and what they can share
Oh, absolutely.
is so much.
It's a resource. They're a resource.
They are a very, very important resource.
You need to come to our next retired teachers meeting.
I'll be there.
There you go.
All right.
I'll remind you.
Y'all have a meeting, y'all just talk about students,
No,
former students? Like,
No,
do you remember
no.
Ricky Tips? Do you remember him? Like, I don't see, do you remember him sitting right up next to my desk?
we don't do that at all.
No,
We have an agenda
I'm just curious.
for each meeting. Yeah.
You know, talk about discipline. I could tell you the inside of her office.
Now,
Her and Mr. Maxon, I know what they look like. I think I spent more time in those than I did classrooms when I was bored. And Sandy Schultz, my desk and her desk were the same the entire school year.
Okay, Ricky, I want to tell the radio audience a project that I'm working on that involved Clay Joe also. The law schools of Franklin County. In the 50s and the 60s, when we went to elementary school, when I went to elementary school, there were lots of these neighborhood schools. They no longer exist. When integration occurred, the black schools were completely closed, and Mike Krupek and Joanne Davis and others are working on finding these schools. If we get any kind of a picture, then he does the sketching, and we have resurrected almost 50 schools
In Franklin County?
in Franklin County. It's an amazing project, and we're looking for right now Midway. That's the only one, and Midway was located in the jump-off area close to close to Monteagle, Marion County. And if anybody listening to this program knows anybody who my age, let's say in the 70s, I'll be for a few more weeks in the 70s, because the next time on my show, radio audience, I'll be 80. But my age went to Midway. So if you have any picture, and I know we didn't have cameras in those days to take, you took school pictures, somebody came, but Mike Krupek is really good about erasing people. If he can just get a vision of that school, he can resurrect that school. And this is going to be so nice for people to have. All of these schools, and he's putting it in a booklet form, and he's doing all of it. And the cost will be as cost effective as he can do it. And it'll be something for our schools to have, the Board of Education, have the library to have, doctors' offices to have, any kind of lobby. It is something, because these are your forgotten schools. And I could go over Prairie Chapel, Wild or something, Gum Creek. Yeah, there's so many that I didn't know existed. So anyway, that's a project I'm working on, and the only one we're missing right now is Midway. So if anybody knows anyone who has a picture of Midway, please let Joanne Davis know, or or WCDT or Cleach or anybody, because we need that picture.
Mike is very good too, if you can just give him a visual
Yes.
of what it looks like. If somebody just remembers what it looks
Right.
like, he can work with that as well.
That's how he resurrected Hillcrest in Deckard. No one could find that picture. And of course, schools like Awalt are underwater now. And we had a hard time, but we found a picture of some people being in front of the school while he erased those. If he can get any kind of a vision, he can sketch it.
Cool.
And it is cool. And I met with him yesterday at the library. He had been sending me pictures all along, but I met with him yesterday at the library because John Hunt has a book at the library of black schools. And those are, of course, ceased in existence in the 60s. So they were closed. And he has those schools. And so Mike kept taking pictures, and and that's how he's getting so many of those schools. But anyway, if anybody has Midway, we're looking for Midway. That's the one law school we don't have. So thank you for letting me make this announcement, because it's a very interesting project. And the people that have joined in on it, I was just going to do like Memorial Deckard Cowan, and then people would start saying, well, aren't you going to do this one? Aren't you going to do that one? And it just grew. Now we have almost 50.
That's impressive. I didn't realize that many ever in the county.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so you ready to wrap this up?
Well, we can wrap it up if we don't have any more calls, but remember Thursday, Republican ladies, to come and hear Dr. Holman. And we also have the Chamber of Commerce dinner on the 21st to announce their Person of the Year. Used to be Man of the Year, but it's now Person of the Year, and I hope and we will announce that on our next show too.
All right.
And that'll be on news by the time we're back on. But
Well, then we'll sign off. This is the Right Way
Carrie,
Girls.
thank
And
you,
thank you for
Lee
being
Joe.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for being here. It's been delightful. We'll see you next time.